In the heart of a small town, a middle school was buzzing with excitement as the day of the much-anticipated school trip approached. The students could barely contain their excitement as they talked about the trip to the famous amusement park. Some were planning which rides they wanted to try first, while others discussed the souvenirs they hoped to bring home. It was a trip that everyone had been looking forward to for months, a chance to escape the usual routine and experience something truly special. Among them was Ethan, a quiet 12-year-old boy with messy brown hair and a tendency to fade into the background. He didn't join in the loud discussions or make plans with the other students. Ethan wasn't like the rest of them. He wasn't one to spend money on souvenirs or plan for indulgent fun. His mother worked 2 jobs to support him, and though she did her best, there were always sacrifices to be made. Ethan understood that money was tight, and as much as he wanted to go, he knew the trip would cost more than what he could afford. As the other kids excitedly talked about the trip, Ethan quietly counted the little savings he'd managed to scrape together from odd jobs. It wasn't enough. There was no way he could pay for the ticket. Sarah, his best friend since childhood, noticed Ethan's hesitation and tried to offer help, suggesting that he could borrow money from her. But Ethan, embarrassed and ashamed, declined. He didn't want to be a burden. He didn't want her to pity him, so he kept his worries to himself, hoping somehow he could find a way to go, knowing deep down that it might never happen. The day of the big school assembly arrived, and the entire class gathered in the gymnasium, buzzing with excitement. The air was thick with anticipation as students chatted about the upcoming trip. Everyone was eager to hear the final details, eager to solidify plans. Even Ethan, though he kept mostly to himself, couldn't help but feel a spark of hope. Maybe something would change. Maybe there'd be a way for him to go after all. Miss Matthews, the class teacher, stood at the front, holding a clipboard and beaming as she began to speak. "All right, everyone, I hope you're ready for the trip of a lifetime," she exclaimed, her voice filled with enthusiasm. "It's going to be a blast. But before we get too excited, let's go over the final details." She went on to explain the cost of the trip, an amount that made Ethan's heart sink. The ticket price, the bus fee, the food and drink expenses, everything added up to a sum far beyond what he could afford. His stomach twisted in knots as he looked around at the faces of his classmates, each one glowing with excitement. They had all paid in full, and now the trip was locked in. Then Miss Matthews' next words hit him like a ton of bricks. "Now remember," she said, "only those who've paid in full will be allowed to attend the trip. No exceptions." Ethan's shoulders slumped as he quietly looked down at his hands. He knew he was one of the few who hadn't paid. Sarah glanced at him from across the room, her eyes softening as she noticed his reaction. Ethan forced a small smile, but inside he felt like the world was crashing down on him. He was used to being overlooked, but this time it hurt in a way he couldn't explain. His heart felt heavy, and the thoughts swirled in his head. He'd never be part of the group, never join in the fun. After the assembly, Ethan lingered by his locker, hoping he could somehow find a way to make it happen. He could already hear his classmates making plans for what they'd do when they got to the park, laughing about the roller coasters they couldn't wait to ride. He wanted to be a part of it so badly, but the reality of his situation seemed so final now. The ticket was out of his reach, and there was nothing he could do. Determined not to give up, Ethan approached Miss Matthews after the crowd had dispersed. His heart was racing as he gathered the courage to speak. He waited until the hallway was mostly empty, and then he walked up to her desk. "Miss Matthews, is there any chance I could still go?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Miss Matthews looked up from her papers, a stern but kind expression on her face. She sighed, and Ethan's stomach dropped. "Ethan, I'm really sorry, but the trip is only for those who've paid. The list is closed, and there's simply no room for anyone else." Her voice was firm, but there was no malice in it. She was just following the rules. Ethan's heart clenched. He tried to keep his composure, but it was impossible. He could feel tears threatening to spill, but he blinked them back, determined not to let anyone see his pain. He nodded quickly, trying to maintain some semblance of dignity. "I understand," he murmured, his voice cracking slightly. "Maybe next time," Miss Matthews added softly, but her words did little to comfort him. Ethan turned away and walked down the hallway, his mind racing. He wanted to scream, to shout at the unfairness of it all, but he couldn't. he couldn't burden anyone with his tears. As Ethan made his way to his next class, he spotted Sarah in the hallway. She was waiting for him, smiling brightly, as if nothing had changed. But when she saw his face, her smile faltered. "Ethan," she asked gently, her brow furrowed with concern. "What happened?" Ethan tried to force a smile, but it was weak, barely there. "I'm fine really," he lied, not wanting to share the truth. He didn't want her to feel bad for him, didn't want her to pity him. "It's just things didn't work out." Sarah's eyes searched his face, but she didn't press further. Instead, she stepped closer and touched his arm. "You know, I'd help you if I could," she said, her voice soft but sincere. "You're my best friend, Ethan." Ethan took a deep breath and shook his head, the familiar ache in his chest growing stronger. "I know, Sarah, I know you would, but I don't want to take your money." The conversation ended there, but the silence between them spoke volumes. Ethan could see Sarah trying to hide her disappointment, but her concern was palpable. The rest of the class, oblivious to his pain, continued to chatter excitedly about the trip. They were already making plans for the day, and Ethan could hear the excitement in their voices. The thought of them experiencing all the fun without him only deepened his isolation. The countdown to the trip was growing shorter, and Ethan knew he would be left behind. His friends would have their memories of laughter, rides, and shared moments, while he would be sitting at home, wondering how things had gone so wrong. The school bell rang, signaling the end of another long day. Ethan, still reeling from the disappointment of being left out, gathered his books slowly. He could hear his classmates laughing and talking about the trip, but their voices felt distant to him. He was about to head to his locker when an unexpected announcement came over the loudspeaker. "Attention, students," Mr. Harrison's voice boomed through the intercom. "Please stay seated, we have a very important announcement to make." Ethan's heart skipped a beat. Was there a change in the trip plans? Had something happened to allow him to go after all? He wasn't sure, but the curiosity gnawed at him. The gymnasium doors creaked open, and the students slowly gathered inside, murmuring among themselves. When the chatter finally died down, Mr. Harrison stood at the front, holding a stack of papers. "I'm sure you're all excited for the upcoming trip," he began, a slight smile on his face. "But I've just received some extraordinary news. A generous benefactor has come forward to make sure that everyone, yes everyone, can go, regardless of whether they've paid or not." There was a pause, and the room erupted into a mix of confusion and surprise. What did he mean? Had the cost been reduced? Was there a discount? Mr. Harrison raised his hands for silence. "It's true," he continued. "The benefactor is none other than the actor Johnny Depp. Yes, Johnny Depp himself has generously offered to cover all expenses for the trip." After hearing about a situation here at the school from an anonymous donor, the room went silent. Ethan's mind was racing. Johnny Depp, the actor he had admired for years, the man he had seen on the big screen countless times. Why would someone like that care about his situation? As Mr. Harrison's words sank in, the students broke into a flurry of excitement. Gasps filled the air. Sarah turned to Ethan, her eyes wide with disbelief. "Did you hear that? Johnny Depp? That's crazy," she exclaimed. Ethan stood frozen, overwhelmed by the sudden shift in his fate. Part of him wanted to laugh at the sheer absurdity of it all. Johnny Depp, a figure so far out of his reach, had just changed his life in a way he never thought possible. Yet there was also an undercurrent of guilt. Why would someone like Johnny Depp, someone so famous, so far removed from his own world, care about him? The morning of the trip arrived, and the air was thick with excitement. The school bus rolled up in front of the school, its doors opening with a cheerful whoosh as the students eagerly filed inside. Their chatter was endless. Stories of what they hoped to do at the amusement park, what rides they couldn't wait to try, and who would get the best souvenir. The buzz of excitement was contagious, but Ethan felt like a stranger to it all. He had spent the past few days grappling with the overwhelming generosity of Johnny Depp's gesture. He couldn't quite wrap his mind around it. How could someone like him, someone who was just a kid in a small town, suddenly be a part of something so extraordinary? His classmates' excitement only reminded him of how out of place he felt. Despite the fact that the trip was now fully paid for, despite the fact that he was going to the amusement park with everyone else, a nagging feeling lingered in his chest. Ethan took a seat at the back of the bus, far from the bustling groups of excited students. He tucked his hands in his lap, and stared out the window, watching the world outside blur past. Sarah found him quickly, sitting beside him with a warm smile.
"Hey," she said softly, nudging him with her elbow. "You should be excited. This is going to be amazing. Everyone's going to have so much fun." Ethan nodded, but it didn't feel real. It was hard to get excited about something that still felt so unearned. Even though Johnny Depp's kindness had given him this opportunity, Ethan still couldn't shake the feeling that he didn't truly belong. He wasn't sure why, after all. The money was there, the ticket was secured, but the weight of his past struggles still lingered. "Thanks, Sarah," Ethan said quietly, forcing a smile. But the words didn't come easily. The truth was, he felt like an outsider on a trip meant for everyone else, not someone like him. As the bus continued its journey toward the amusement park, Principal Harrison stood up from the front, catching the attention of all the students. The buzz of conversation quieted, and the principal's voice echoed through the speakers. "All right, everyone," he began. "Before we get there, we've got a special surprise for you all. As you know, thanks to the generosity of Mr. Johnny Depp, we're able to be here today. But he wanted to send you all a little message." Ethan's heart skipped a beat. Johnny Depp. Ethan couldn't believe it. The idea of the actor who he had watched on screen so many times, speaking directly to him and his classmates, felt almost too surreal to process. A few moments later, a video appeared on the screen in front of the bus. The image flickered for a moment, and then there he was, Johnny Depp, standing in a softly lit room, his usual calm demeanor evident as he spoke directly into the camera. "Hey there, guys," Johnny Depp said with a warm smile. "I know this trip is something really special, and I'm so glad I could help make it happen for all of you. But more importantly, I wanted to remind you that this trip is about more than just the fun you'll have at the park. It's about the people you're with. It's about kindness, compassion, and the way you treat each other." Ethan's eyes widened. Johnny Depp was talking about kindness. He was talking about him. Johnny's voice softened, growing more sincere. "I've heard about the wonderful community here at your school, and I want you to remember that no one should ever feel left out or excluded because of something like money. Life has its ups and downs, but you all have the power to make sure everyone feels included. And Ethan," he added, with a knowing smile, "you're a part of that. Keep being the kind-hearted person you are." The bus fell completely silent. Ethan could hardly believe what he was hearing. He felt his face flush as his heart swelled with emotion. For the first time, someone saw him. Really saw him. And not for his lack of money, not for his struggles, but for who he was as a person. Sarah turned to him, her eyes wide with awe. "Did you hear that?" she whispered, her voice filled with emotion. "He said your name. He really said your name." Ethan's breath caught in his throat. His mind was spinning, but one thought was clear. Johnny Depp, the man who had made his living by portraying characters on screen, had just spoken words of encouragement that cut straight through Ethan's doubts. He belonged. He wasn't just an afterthought, someone left behind due to circumstances he couldn't control. Tears welled up in Ethan's eyes, but he quickly blinked them away. He didn't want anyone to see how much it all meant. But deep down he felt something shift inside him, an enormous weight lifting off his shoulders.
Johnny Depp's message had reached him in a way he couldn't have expected. It wasn't just about the trip anymore. It was about feeling seen, valued, and like he truly belonged in the world around him. The rest of the bus ride was a blur, but for Ethan, the message from Johnny Depp had already begun to change everything. As the bus finally pulled into the parking lot of the amusement park, the entire group erupted into cheers. Ethan felt a flutter of excitement in his chest, but this time it wasn't just because of the roller coasters or the games. It was because for the first time in a long time he felt like he truly belonged. Johnny Depp's message had worked wonders, and as he stepped off the bus, he felt lighter, like a weight had been lifted from his shoulders. The day at the park was everything Ethan had dreamed of, and more. For once he wasn't an outsider. He joined Sarah and their classmates in line for the first ride, the towering roller coaster that loomed ahead like a beast. He had been hesitant at first, but Sarah encouraged him, and he found himself laughing with her as they climbed into their seats, the excitement palpable in the air. The ride was wild, thrilling, and for the first time Ethan wasn't worried about being left out. He screamed along with everyone else, the rush of adrenaline giving him a sense of freedom he hadn't felt in years. They spent the entire day running from one ride to another, playing games, and taking goofy photos together. Ethan even won a prize at one of the carnival games, something he never thought he'd be able to afford. As he held the stuffed animal in his arms, his heart swelled with pride. It was more than just a prize, it symbolized his place in this world, his newfound sense of belonging. He had done something on his own, something he could be proud of. Later, as the sun began to set, and the park started to empty out, Sarah and Ethan sat together on a bench, watching the last few groups of people rush by. The evening air was cool, and the park lights twinkled in the distance. "You know," Sarah said, smiling at him, "you're a lot different today. I haven't seen you this happy in a long time." Ethan looked at her, surprised. It hadn't really hit him until now, but she was right. He had been laughing more, joking around with the other kids, and even opening up about his hopes for the future. He felt free, in a way he hadn't before. He felt like he could dream without the constant worry of never being able to reach those dreams. "I guess I just needed to believe that there are good people out there," Ethan said quietly, his voice full of emotion. "People who care. Johnny Depp, he didn't have to do that for me, but he did. And I realized that maybe there are more people like that. People who don't care about how much money you have, just who you are." Sarah's eyes softened, and she reached out to gently squeeze his hand. "I was really worried about you, Ethan. I know you've been through a lot, but you deserve this. You deserve to have fun, to feel like you belong." Ethan's eyes glistened as he looked at her. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for always being there for me. I think I'm starting to believe I can do more than just survive. I can live, and I can dream big." The rest of the evening passed in a blur of laughter and shared moments with friends. As they made their way back to the bus, Ethan couldn't help but think about how much had changed in just one day. He was no longer the quiet, lonely boy at the back of the room. He was a part of something bigger, something full of possibilities, and it was all because someone, like Johnny Depp, had cared enough to make a difference in his life. As the day drew to a close, and the bus made its way back to school, Ethan sat quietly by the window, the soft hum of conversation around him barely registering. His mind was a whirl of emotions. The trip had been everything he had hoped for and more. It wasn't just the roller coasters, the games, or the souvenir he had never dreamed of affording. It was the realization that kindness and generosity had shattered the barriers that once made him feel so small, so invisible. Ethan thought about what Johnny Depp had said, how important it was to be kind, to never let money divide people. He understood now that while money could create walls, kindness could tear them down, and Johnny Depp's kindness had done exactly that for him. It had allowed him to experience something he thought was beyond his reach, something that not only gave him joy but also a sense of worth and belonging. When the students returned to school, Ethan's heart felt lighter than it had in years. He no longer felt like the boy who was left out of the fun, the one whose circumstances dictated his place in the world. He felt like a part of the group, like he mattered. For the first time in a long time, Ethan felt seen, heard, and valued. That evening, as he sat down at his desk, Ethan began to write a letter to Johnny Depp. His words were simple but full of sincerity. He thanked Johnny Depp for the trip, for the generosity that had given him so much more than just a day at an amusement park. He thanked him for teaching him that small acts of kindness could change a life. As Ethan finished the letter, he felt a sense of peace. He was no longer burdened by his financial situation. His future felt brighter, filled with the hope that kindness could truly make a difference, and that maybe, just maybe, his world could be different. Thank you so much for watching. I hope Ethan's story touched your heart as much as it did ours. It's a reminder that even the smallest acts of kindness can have a huge impact on someone's life. Remember, we all have the power to make a difference, no matter how big or small. If you enjoyed this story, please give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and leave a comment below. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Don't forget to subscribe for more heartwarming stories like this one. Let's spread kindness and positivity together.